Kindergarten teacher in California breaks her silence on DEI. I thought this was interesting, and it's a good segue into education. You know, I love education. You know, I think that the real answer to so many problems in our life, is education. And so we can talk about the Constitution. We can talk about Jefferson and life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. But if our children are not educated in the true classical Greco-Roman liberal arts tradition and learn how to think, how to read, how to write, how to basic math, the art of science, okay, and the science of art, then there's really no hope. Okay, so schools like Hillsdale are important, and our public education. What Trump does with the Department of Education is going to be interesting. Okay, so this is a sign of it's a sign. This article is going to show what certain teachers have been living under, the suffocating atmosphere environment, and also the freedom that Trump's given them. So let me share. Okay. A kindergarten teacher in California breaks her silence on DEI. This is by Michelle Bal, Bal. All right. And let me see. February 10th, 2025. Okay. Today, during an argument with a colleague about DEI, I was once again called a white supremacist. I am, of course, no such thing. This is the teacher writing herself. What had I said? I dared to say that I agree with President Trump's stance on eliminating all forms of DEI in schools. It's not the first time I've been slandered, and I'm sure it won't be the last, but I've had enough. In the past few months, especially after the incredible victory of President Trump in this election, I've decided to stop staying silent. Good for you. I've resolved not to be afraid to speak my mind, to say what I believe, to share my views, and to voice my disagreements, even if it means being looked at differently or being despised by those around me. The kids I teach deserve no less. Yes, they do. They deserve no less than that teacher being herself. Now, if being herself leads to situations or views that are just unacceptable in terms of what the parents of those children think, well, then that's a situation they have to work out. But the idea that a teacher can be in line with what the sweeping majority of voters just confirmed, and that's a problem, is absurd. And the fact that these teachers have had to um, suffer this soft censorship, let's call it, this idea that you really can't express yourself because you're so afraid of being called names. What does that do to the soul of the teacher when they feel like they're not themselves, that they're wearing a mask? It has to affect their energy, right? The enthusiasm and passion just for life, and therefore their teaching. I am a teacher in Silicon Valley, one of the most liberal places in the United States. At my school and among my colleagues, the dominant opinion aligns with the so-called woke ideology, which is very different from what I believe. For months, I stayed silent. I sat restlessly through DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion meetings, and I listened in silence to insults aimed at President Trump and anyone who supported him. I endured endless discussions about land acknowledgments, skin color, and gender ideology without expressing what I truly felt. It felt worth having a debate about DEI's pedagogical impact on children, but no one wanted a real debate. Then something changed. After Trump's victory in November, I realized I was not necessarily part of a minority. The majority of Americans shared my opinions, and perhaps yet more did, both in our school and in the homes of the families who entrust their children to us. That gave me the courage to start speaking out. The day after the election, while everyone around me expressed sadness and disappointment over Trump's win, I decided to say simply, I'm happy. From that moment on, I have been called names: white supremacist, racist, stupid. It's odd to me that the same people who preach diversity, equity, inclusion have decided to exclude and insult me simply because I hold different beliefs. It seems those principles don't apply to diverse perspectives or ways of thinking. That's a disservice to children. The amount of raw material we convey to children in school, a few historically important artists here, a few composers there, is minimal compared to the reading and learning these kids will do at home with friends and on their own. They therefore must develop critical reasoning capabilities that allow them to judge the credibility and even the moral worth of everything they consume. There it is. That is so good right there. The amount of raw material we convey to children, the raw facts and data to remember, right, is minimal compared to the reading and learning these kids will do at home with friends and on their own. And there's that reminder, with friends. Who do your children hang out with? What are the parents of your children's friends like? Because you can't blame the kids. But if the parents of the kids your friends hang out with or have views radically different, and not that you can't have diversity in views, of like she's saying, but if their views are views that are just full of hatred or this closed idea that you can't, you have to think in their orthodox, politically progressive orthodox manner, or you just are ignored and denied and insulted, well, then you have to ask yourself, who are your kids hanging out with? They therefore, the children, must develop critical reasoning capabilities that allow them to judge the credibility and even moral worth of everything they consume. That's why I felt it was important to speak about the Pope, and why, even when we respect certain institutions and certain people, that you need to critically think, critical reasoning capabilities that allow you to judge the credibility and even the moral worth of everything they consume. As a teacher, I've observed that DEI does the opposite. It can strip children of those faculties. I strive to teach my students genuine respect and inclusion, regardless of their skin color, gender, beliefs, or culture. In fact, um, beneficent inclusion is their natural tendency. Isn't that true? Children don't really need to be told to be inclusive. It seems to be natural. Children on the playground usually, the little age, right? Especially early elementary school, right? They don't look at skin color or disability. Of course, there's exceptions, and there's always going to be kids that are not nice to each other. That happens too. But in general, kids are very inclusive. They're not looking at these things. The parents are pointing it out to them for the first time, and their little innocent eyes, they don't even see it. They just. I have been a teacher, and I see it. And you know what? I've seen children with physical disabilities, and you know what was so refreshing? Sometimes the kids, they just refuse to treat the kid any different with the physical disability, and that was the best thing for the child with the disability, to not be treated any different. They expected to run the first base. And if you can't run as fast, they just seem to. And you know what? There was a specific situation where I can think of, where a child who had something with his legs and couldn't run as well, perhaps, as the other children, and he was expected to run though and try his best. But I never saw a moment where they were mad at him or disappointed in him or bullied him because his ability to not run as fast, okay, or inability to run as fast. It was just they held him to the same standard of effort and participation. They didn't baby him. I think that right there, when I watched that on the playground and I watched it day in and day out, that taught me something. A good teacher learns more from their students than the students learn from them. Okay. Herd mentality is the default, and that is why I aim to teach my students to speak their minds, to express themselves without fear, and to listen to others with respect, even when they disagree, especially when they disagree. There it is. To express themselves. This is good. You might say this is not groundbreaking, but who doesn't need this reminder? Don't we need this reminder that we need to express ourselves without fear and to listen to others with respect, even when they disagree, especially when they disagree? I believe it's through listening to different views and dissent that critical thinking is developed. I also aim to teach my students that success is based on merit. Whoa, imagine that. And if they want to achieve something, they must work hard for it. Nothing worthwhile comes without effort, and I want them to understand the value of perseverance, dedication, and hard work. Our values lie far more in work than in the mere circumstances of our birth. Above all, I want my students to be free to choose, free to speak, and free to think. This is what I want for myself as well. Freedom is the cornerstone of this country, and it's a principle I will always stand by and uphold. In education, typically slow to change, it is beginning to feel like a new era. Bravo, bravo. Nice job. Michelle Ball is a kindergarten teacher in Palo Alto, California, originally from Milan, Italy. That's a nice little beautiful reminder.